an absolute stormer of a book by John Piper. Came out in 2020 by Crossways on the providence of God. Real brick of a tome of about, I don't know how many pages, talking about 700 odd. Yep, 752 and more, 800 pages worth of a book, hardback. I picked that up for 50 quid, 30 quid less on Amazon. Divine providence is a really important thing. I mean, this book was published at the start of, during COVID, the height of COVID, when the world seemed upside down. I said seemed upside down. God is sovereign. God is in charge. You know, I think the Calvinists really have this under their fingernails, as God is in charge of all things. Or as R.C. Sproul put it, there are no maverick molecules in the universe. Nothing happens except by God's divine decree. Not just a mere, well, okay, then I'll allow it. I'll allow, like some laissez-faire father or complacent grandfather that really has no energy left to get involved in creation. No, very, very far from that. What's been said here is that, yes, God is in complete control of all things. He governs the universe and makes use of secondary means. And these secondary means include, well, the sun shines. It's God giving light to the universe. Gravity to bring things to the earth, to stop us from flying into outer space, etc. But makes use of secondary means of, of diseases to bring about our repose or our death or our repentance. Makes use of the so-called free will of man, the free will even of Satan and the demonic, to bring about his plans. God isn't sitting back going, oh, if only I could get them to do this or that. No, God is not a godling, as is mentioned here. One thing I really like about this book is it's just absolutely biblical from start to finish. As the front cover says, from Genesis to Revelation, the providence of God directs the entire course of redemptive history. He's going to take us on a sweep from Genesis to Revelation, showing how important God's providence is. Now, I've seen this before with Yves Congar, did something similar with the Temple of God, going from Genesis to Revelation, showing that this was a guiding thread to understand salvation history. Here, John Piper is doing the same with providence, with the idea that God is in control, calling the shots, leading and decreeing and bringing things to completion. For his glory, and this brings us into line with the likes of the Westminster Standards, the Westminster Catechism. Why did God create the world? For his glory, and that we would enjoy, and that we would have enjoyment in it, enjoyment in God's glory, that we would live, as St. Paul writes in Ephesians, to the praise of his wondrous grace, to the praise of his glorious grace. He's going to talk about that with reference to C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis was would you say, scandalized by this and said, well, what's all this? God likes to be praised. Does he like the sound of his own voice? Does he like the sound of his own name? That he needs praising? Oh, give me a bit more praise, folks. I need some praise. Well, no. When we praise something, we delight in it, as C.S. Lewis points out in Mere Christianity. This is what football fans do on a pitch. They praise their team and delight in the game more, delight in the club more. They become identified and one with it. so that even though they're spectating, they're able to say, we did this and we did that, because praise unites us with the thing praised. It allows us to delight more in the thing praised. By praising God's glory, God displays his glory like an emanation in the universe. And we, as rational creatures, are called to delight in that glory rather than seek our own broken systems, as Jeremiah says, and worship the creature rather than the creator, as Paul writes in Romans 1, which is the first form of idolatry. So just have a look at the table of contents briefly. What is divine providence? What is divine self-exaltation? Is it good news? Glorying in God's glory, praising God's glory. Then we've got the sweep of the Old Testament and how God is bringing his designs about. And then we've got in part 2 the New Covenant and what's going on there. It's a vast book. Providence over nature, providence over Satan and demons, providence over kings and nations, providence over life and death, providence even over sin. But God is never the author of sin. The Reformers were very clear on that. God uses the sinful actions of people and decrees that certain things will come about in the universe, but does not himself be the author of these actions. These things are mysterious, but are tackled very well by John Piper. Again, we are like two-dimensional lines trying to work out three-dimensionality or four or five-dimensionality beyond us. He writes that this is the culmination of a lifetime of work. He calls it his magnus opus, or others have said that about it. It's certainly one of the bigger pieces of writing he's engaged with. I find it absolutely fascinating. It's available on audio as well. Audible, it's about 20 hours, 20 plus hours of audio. This is another good book on divine providence. What's interesting about this is you have various perspectives. So you have four scholars. William Lane Craig's probably the most famous there. No offense, lads, to the others, but God causes all things. That would be a Calvinist perspective. God directs all things. You've got Molinism, Ron Highfield. God controls by liberating, and God limits his control, Gregory Boyd. And so all four aspects or four takes on divine providence are explored here, and there'd be something for every denomination and none there to ponder over. Certainly for me, it was one of the earliest things that led me to God as a young man, hitchhiking around and living a fairly chaotic life. I was just absolutely stunned by some of the things that happened along the way, and had conversations with people and with myself, and really pondered how on earth could that have possibly have happened. We didn't plan it, and everything lined up. People we met, things that happened, provisions, blessings, safety, opportunities came our way. And you look back over the sweep of it, there was definitely a hand, a rational force directing and leading. And for me, it led me ultimately to the church and to Christianity. For others who were somewhat, whose lives were somewhat threaded together with mine, would say things like, well, it's just it's bizarre, man, but it's just, wow, life is cosmic. But for me, it led me to seek the rational author behind the script that was being unfolded in my very chaotic late teenage life as I hitchhiked around. It was before the age of Google, before the, had no money for Lonely Planet maps and books and things. We stuck our thumb out and hoped for the best. And seeing the hand of God's providence in such circumstances really led me to the Lord. And I know that I'm certainly not the only one there. Let me just finish with the Westminster Confession of Faith from the 1600s. God, the creator of all things, doth uphold, direct, dispose, and govern all creatures, actions, and things, from the greatest even to the least, by his most wise and holy providence, according to his infallible foreknowledge and the free and immutable counsel of his own will, to the praise of the glory of his wisdom, his power, his justice, his goodness, and his mercy. All of those things are at play, not just God isn't the Santa in the sky. There's justice, there's glory, there's mercy, there's power on display. God calls his elect and they come to him. God, my sheep hear my voice and they come to me. And when we really realize how close God is, how in control God is, even though the world comes under the wrath of God, even though there's the chaotic workings of the fallen spirits, God is sovereignly at play. God is sovereignly in charge of this world and every molecule of this universe. Well, what need is there for other mediators than Jesus Christ, the God-man? And what need is there to shout loudly or to go to a particular place even seeking this God who is ever-present reality, who in him we live, move, and have our being. Here's some thoughts on this wonderful topic of God's sovereign providence.